when you're in the presence of nature, you're getting a very clear, visceral and visual reminder that there are things out there way bigger than you that have been out there for many, many centuries or millions of years, right? That you're seeing and you're taking in. And it's like more impermanent than anything else out there.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yonah Weiss, and glad to be joined today by another guest. Wonderful person. If you don't know him, you're about to dig a little deep into the life of Derek Clifford. So I appreciate you coming on the show today. How are you doing?
We're doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here.
My pleasure. If you guys don't know who this is, he is the founder of Elevate Equity. He's someone who's living his life to its fullest, living the dream that a lot of us think about. How can I retire from my career and go full-time in real estate and just do whatever I want, live on my own schedule? And he's someone that has done that. And really excited to talk to you today about, everything that you've accomplished until now, including a book that you published recently called Part-Time Real Estate, Investing for Full-Time Professionals. So I love that kind of play on words there. Part-time, full-time, but we got to get it done. So tell me a little bit about, obviously this is a recent transition for you, right? Of transitioning from that full-time job into real estate. How long did that transition take from the first time that you actually got involved in real estate until, now where you're at?
Yeah, it depends on where you start. But basically, when I started investing, I started investing on accident. My wife was the one who kind of got us into this. And that happened back when she bought her condo in Washington State in 2008, a couple months before the real estate crash. But if you're going to back up to where we actually were doing it actively, that was 2016, 2017, where we really started going intentional in learning how to do real estate from the beginning, by learning from Bigger Pockets, people like you online, and just various resources out there. And so we started building this stuff up on the side. And while we were making this incredible income in the California Bay Area, we were using what Brandon Turner calls unfair advantage to take that high salary and put it to use in some property out in the Midwest, because Midwest properties are very cheap. You can buy them for, back then, I think, it was like $50,000 to $60,000 or $70,000 per door. We were buying properties. Now that's nowhere to be found, at least in areas where you wouldn't want to live yourself, at least to put it mildly. But, once we got started and rolling, our first year, we ended up getting 16 units. And then we maxed out the number of loans we could take with the Fannie Mae 30-year standard residential loans, and then started looking in multifamily and got some mentors and continued to network, especially ramped it up through one of your challenges on LinkedIn, which is what I recommend for everyone. And then from there, we just kind of took off and just started doing some syndications, capital raising, joined more mastermind groups. And it's always kind of this evolving process. We're always learning. We're always wanting to do more. And that was kind of the basis or the foundation of what the life that we have right now, because pretty soon what ended up happening was the side hustle took on a life of its own and eventually got to the point where my full-time job was kind of getting in the way of the potential. And so then we went through some mindset shifts. My wife and I, especially with her help, we made the decision to leave the job and build up a runway of about a year to a year and a half worth of expenses. And, when we did that, we realized that we built up a year to a year and a half of expenses in the Bay Area.
That's
but what
great.
happens, if we were to actually just take that and travel? And so we did the math and we found out that even living in Airbnbs across the country, we can live for 50 to 60% of what it was costing us to live in the Bay. So we're like, we don't have kids yet. Why not do this now? What's the issue? Why not do it? So that's exactly what we ended up doing.
That's amazing. So you basically took off traveling around Airbnb to Airbnb around the country, seeing different places. Was this around the world also, or just limited to the US?
Well, it was just in the US because of COVID, right? So it made it difficult to leave the United States. And even there were still some dynamics going from state to state that we had to worry about. But that's changing because next week, actually, we're recording this in April. And next week, we're going to be heading to Portugal And then we're going to be heading off to Greece and a bunch of other places in Europe for 4 months. So we're going to be out there for a really long time.
That's amazing. And you've, been able to do this, like you said, building up an amount of kind of a nest egg or an amount that you can reliably live off of and those expenses, but simultaneously you have your real estate portfolio, which is cash flowing, and you're able to get probably monthly or quarterly, checks coming in. Are you invested? Obviously, you've done some syndication. You talked about joining some masterminds, groups like that. Did you guys invest passively in other people's deals before you started doing actively sponsoring deals?
We think that that's super important for people to do. And we did do that, except we only did it in one because at the time our finances were limited because we're throwing all of our capital into single families, right? Because that's where we were at the time. When we started getting when we started ramping up, we were putting all of our money into these houses, and then we're able to also save a little bit to join one syndication. And the whole point behind that was it was farsighted because we knew we wanted to do something like that in the future. So we wanted to learn from one of the best people that did it, that we knew. So we partnered up with these individuals, and we watched how they were able to accelerate the wealth and just add value to the apartment complexes, to the investors, and to themselves. And it just really was inspiring to see that, and then helped us enable the possibility of what the blueprint looks like when we are in the other shoes, or when we're in their shoes and trying to add value back to investors.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's a lot of different kind of, pointers you can pick up from that. I know personally, having invested in some deals, you see, how they respond, what their monthly or weekly or whatever, quarterly, whatever their updates are, the emails going out, the projections and the updates and things like that. It's really important to see, to kind of, manage expectations to investors as well. So I'm sure that some of those things you've taken notes on.
Of course. I mean, watching how they did that, right? Like the communication was really important, and how they communicated, right? Showing them that, well, here's an issue, but here's also a resolution. This is how we're going to solve the problem. And then also showing the financial reporting, handling distributions, and making sure that when investors do get paid, it gets paid timely, and just the professionalism and the way that the investment summaries were made at the beginning. All of that were huge like learning points for me to be able to model that when we had our own offerings and raising capital for other investors as well.
For sure. I mean, that's huge. Obviously, this is something that you've built up. Unlike a lot of people, think this whole syndication, this whole real estate investing thing, it can be a side hustle. It can be, a great way to kind of create passive income. But really what it is, what you're doing, I mean, it's a company, it's a new job, and it's really something that you've built up and obviously are continuing to build by acquiring more properties and bringing on more investors, right?
Yes, sir. Have you read the E-Myth before, Yonah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when you read the E-Myth, you make this realization, at least back when I first read it, that there's a big difference between someone who is really good at what they do and someone who owns the business of what they do. And by jumping into this side hustle, being full-time person, I'm kind of stepping away from being someone who is doing it on the side to now this is the thing. This is my business, right? Like this is how I make money. This is how we survive. This is how we're creating wealth for our future generations and for us. And so we take it very seriously, and it kind of teaches you to do that. And whether or not it's for you or not, you learn in business that as long as your vision and mindset is big enough, you can start plugging people into your vision to help you figure out, how to execute what needs to go forward. So that was just a really big learning point for me. And tons of books, which I'm sure we'll get into later on, helped us along the way figure out that this particular business is now what it is, and we have to nurture it and maintain it.
For sure. And you have to really have a passion to do that, because bring it from a side hustle, bring it from like doing something that you enjoy doing, and then creating a business and being successful and growing that and scaling that business is something you really have to, as any entrepreneur knows, you have to have a lot of passion behind that. And so obviously, so what is the passion behind the Elevate Equity and behind what you are doing now?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that. Thanks, Yonah. Like that's actually the first time I've been asked that question, which surprises me because it's such a basic and, a really necessary question. I would say that we look to enable degrees of freedom for everyone in our value chain. So for our investors, for our team members, for even our residents, we try to enable the 3 degrees of freedom, which is time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. And then we've also added recently, last couple months, health as well, like that. So it's a 3+1 degrees, because, having those four components really allows an individual or a human being, granted that they're ready for it, to be able to live their fullest potential. And so by taking care of the financial piece of it, the time piece of it, the location piece of it, you're able to do what my wife and I are essentially doing right now. Yes, it's true that we're still working a job because it's our business, and we have to work those roles that we cannot quite yet afford to have people work and fill in those spots. So we're doing that until we grow to a point where we can do that. Either way, we have still created a place where we have time freedom, financial freedom, locational freedom to be able to do whatever it is that we want to do. And health is always going to be, and continuing will be, a very fundamental piece of why we're doing all of this and how it continues to facilitate it. So just by inspiring people to think about time, location, and financial freedom, right? And a lot of people think about that and they seem so overwhelmed. There's nowhere to start. Yeah. We always encourage people to look at 1 degree of freedom first. Mm-hmm. Get yourself locationally independent first, right? Find a job where you can work remote. That'll give you a little bit of a taste of how it feels to be able to live in a different time zone or live overseas or whatever. Right. Gives you a little bit more control of your life. And then you can work on your time freedom, which is next, which means building up a nest egg, working hard so that eventually, you can have control of your time. Mm-hmm. Not saying that you're going to not work at all, but at least you have full control of your time.
Yeah,
you
don't have Exactly.
Correct. You don't have a boss that says, hey, you've got to work from 9 to 5, right? And some W-2 jobs will allow that, right? So, there's always that too. So like I said, there's layers of the onion that we recommend people start peeling off, right, to start getting that and craving the extra layer of the onion. You start slowly picking at it, and eventually you get to a point where the how gets legs because the why is big enough.
Love that. Yeah, that's amazing. Let me talk about the location freedom for a minute, because you talked about you traveling around from Airbnb to Airbnb. I'm really curious about that. I mean, was this something that you planned out for a long time, or just kind of took it as it went and like, hey, love to go see this place or that state or this park or that whatever? I know I've seen some pictures of you guys posting, on top of mountains, hiking and things like that. Was this planned out, and is this something that you will continue doing?
Yeah, it wasn't a plan when we first started. I'll give you a little bit more insight. We bought our house about a couple months before COVID came. And believe it or not, about a year and a half later, we sold it for a huge equity gain. Wow. because we were in the burbs, right? And a lot of people in the California Bay Area were moving out from the Bay, from the city, to get more space and get themselves set up so that they don't have to go out and do stuff, right? And be more dependent on public transportation, things like that. So our house had appreciated a lot, and we had moved to that city a couple months before because my wife had a job there at a brick and mortar. She's a doctor, and so she was working at a brick and mortar. And then when they shut down California, we had to turn to ourselves and ask ourselves about 6 months later, like, now that we don't have that, she's going online for all of her business. I am also all online, even when I was working a full-time job. And we said, if we were in the situation now, would we turn around and buy this house right now at this moment in time? And the answer was no. And then we were talking with a mentor, and a mentor was like, because he had like 5 kids at home. He lives in San Jose. And he said, if I were you, I would just like go and take a sabbatical. I would just go and just like do a 6-month, leave, and just maybe come back to your job, maybe not. It just depends on what you want to do, and go find yourself. And so that's initially how it all started, Yonah, as we started traveling just because I was working at the same time, but we were traveling just to kind of like, discover something about ourselves. And it was through the travel and the pattern interrupts that our mindset just took a quantum leap, right? Because we were like, wow, we have this locational freedom now. What about time freedom? Like, what about now? How can I get myself out of the full-time job using my side hustle? Right. Because that has become something I've been very passionate about. Right. And then, just the expression of living those 3 degrees of freedom has just been something that we want to help everyone achieve.
That's amazing. So what was one of those places, out of curiosity, that you did travel to that was just an unbelievable experience?
Oh man, there's so many, it's really hard to pin it down.
Name a couple.
If I had to pick two, I'm really partial to the mountains. So I really like Lake Tahoe. If you've never been to Lake Tahoe, that place is magical. It was really incredible to be there. just because the water is so clean, and you're surrounded by mountains. It's perfect weather because it's California and Nevada, right? And it's so clean out there that you can paddle out to the middle of the lake, and you can grab a water bottle or have it with you and just drink the water out there in the lake. It's incredible. I just love it. And the color of the water, it's just, I can't say much more about it. Just, I'm gushing on it. And then I'm really partial to Colorado because I love my home state. And, just being in Denver and being in Colorado Springs to visit with family, and then the trees, the fresh air, the mountains, like that's just my jam. So those are the two places that we really enjoyed.
Very cool. That's awesome. And I'm sure you did you did some hiking, went up and got out there. That's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. We got out there and we got it. It was good.
It's so true what you're saying. When you go out in nature, or you just go and change your location. When you change your location, you change, we have a saying from our sages in the Judaism that if you change your location, you change your mazel, like you change your constellations, you change the possibilities of your life completely change. And like you said, it's a quantum leap. What happens, a shift that you would have never been able to make. And certain things come to your mind, certain opportunities come your way, certain decisions you make would have been totally different had you not been in that same routine, in the same place. And that's why I feel it's so important for people to go out, take breaks, go travel, go see places you've never been before. I'm not a huge world traveler. I've been around to certain places, but I definitely love to just take some time off and just go into the mountains or go, to the beach or whatever it is and just take some time off.
Yeah. And, sometimes, Yonah, you have to actually force yourself to do it because
for sure.
I told myself many times I didn't have the time to do it. But my wife, that's where she's been super, super helpful and the biggest piece to all of this and enabling it to happen, because she asked really good questions. And that's just what she does. She's a visionary, right? I'm more of an integrator. She's kind of the visionary type of person. Mm-hmm. And so by asking these great questions that I don't have answers to, it gets you thinking. And then you have to start blocking out time to either look at this question or just, ponder on it, just let it marinate for a while. And then every once in a while, when your significant other forces you to go out and do that, all of a sudden answers start becoming clear because you're in this incredible nature. Most likely you're doing physical exertion. So that helps with the biochemistry in your body. But also the thing is that I'm convinced, Yonah, is that when you're in the presence of nature, you're getting a very clear, visceral and visual reminder that there are things out there way bigger than you that have been out there for many, many centuries or millions of years, right? That you're seeing and you're taking in. And it's more impermanent than anything else out there. And I think that, being inspired by that and having a crystal clear mind allows you to find internal answers that are obvious, things that, you have layers and layers of thoughts that are on top of each other. And when you get inspired or you're in this majestic beauty, all of those thoughts just kind of vanish. And then just your authenticity just flows out and you're able to make these incredible breakthroughs.
100%. That's absolutely right. I mean, people, whatever you want to call it, it's out there and you connect in a certain way when you're out in nature. You just see the beauty, the majesty, and it's really hard not to be humbled and not to be able to start thinking beyond yourself. So I love that. That's a great kind of segue into what we're going to talk about next, Derek, which is the book that you wrote. I mean, it was really about helping others, right? And taking the knowledge that you had and the experiences that you had to help others, create long-term wealth. So tell me about that process of writing the book and publishing it and what was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, I wish I could say that the inspiration for it was I was out in nature and just this lightning bolt of inspiration came in and struck me. And then I was like, oh, I got to do this. No, that wasn't the case at all. What ended up happening was as I started building my single family portfolio up at my place of my full-time work, I kept getting these questions over and over again from all of my coworkers. And I realized that I was answering the same questions over and over again, or at least in different ways. And so I started listing these questions down, and it was so much. It was at least a full page of questions. And I felt so passionate about teaching it that I knew I had to systematize it somehow. So I told them, hey, if I wrote a book, would that help out? Or what would you think? And they just lit up, right? And they're like, oh, let's do it. And so what I ended up doing was, and I don't tell people this much, but I wrote my book in 30 days. I wrote 30,000 words in 30 days. And I wrote 1,000 words every day.
Great.
And I have this tracker. I'm a very much a systematized person. So every day I have, I had a tracker where if I didn't check off the 1,000 words, then guess what? Tomorrow I have to write 2,000. So, and then I went through this self-publishing school as well that kind of helped me figure out like how to plan the book. But basically I did it all myself. I wrote everything. I put all the graphics together and hired someone to make them look a little bit nicer. And I did all of that. It took me about 6 months to get it from writing and editing all the way through to formatting and then publishing. But I'm really proud of the book because it's very applicable. First half of the book is about mindset and what to expect as a real estate investor and how to get your spouse on board. All these little things that no one talks about, right? That needs to be discussed before you start investing. Then I give the blueprint because, I say that mindset precedes everything, Yonah, right?
Sure.
If you don't have the mindset to invest in real estate, you might as well just not do it because it takes time. It's hard work. It's very competitive. And if you stick with it, there's going to be ups and downs. And so you have to have that mindset to be able to stick with it so that you hold your property through the downs and keep going and know that like there's an end place that's going to be better. You just have to stick with it. Right. And so that mindset piece is huge. So we spend all of that time in the beginning talking about what to expect, problems that come up, working with your spouse, leveraging them, leveraging their wisdom and their patience and everything that they have to offer. And then the second half of the book is how I built out my single family portfolio and went on to multifamily.
That's awesome. I think that's extremely practical because like you said, you have to build a foundation. And if you don't have a foundation, you can't build a building. So the blueprint will only be relevant if you're ready for that. So I love that. I'm going to check out the book myself because those are some things that I can certainly use a little pointers on.
Sure.
And, everyone needs help and everyone needs, strengthening themselves, and mindset is always something everyone needs work on.
Oh yeah.
Before we get to the final four, this is obviously questions that we ask all of our guests. If you guys don't know this, Derek is also the host of an awesome podcast called Elevate Your Equity. And I highly recommend everyone checking it out. And at the end of his podcast, he has the lightning round where he asks 5 questions. And I'm going to turn the tables on Derek and ask him the 5 questions that he asks all of his guests. So you ready for this?
Yonah, I am not surprised that you like to surprise and delight. That is not a surprise here. But yes, I am ready. Let's do it.
Okay, 30 seconds is on the clock.
All right.
First question, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why?
So this book has probably been mentioned quite a bit, but I'm going to say, if I can't say the one thing, I'm going to say The Gap and the Gain. That book by Dan Sullivan, if you haven't heard of this book, had helped me reframe my mindset from being more of a comparison-based person where I was looking to the outside world for validation to being more of a grateful internal person looking backward inside of myself to say, wow, I've achieved so much in the last year or two. Why not tap into that instead of what I'm missing to set goals and go where I'm going? That's the basic gist of the book. And I've taken away a lot more than that. And there's a lot of practical tools in there on how to bring that into awareness from a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. But I just love that book for that reason.
Awesome. I love that. And we're going to put that in the show notes also. A great book there. Second question, if people wanted to emulate your success, what's the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps?
I would say go to your calendar right now, go to your Gmail or go to your Outlook or whatever, and block out an hour somewhere on your calendar to devote to whatever it is that you're passionate about. Just do it right now. Block out 5 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever you can afford. Just know that the more time that you block out, the more time the quicker it's going to take for you to get to where you want to get to.
Right.
And even if you don't have a plan for that hour, for me, I imagine it was going into the office at 7 a.m. and just going in there and not having a plan. Just sit down and do that hour, because even if you don't have a plan, you will use that hour to figure out what you're going to do for that hour. So just do it. And that consistency is absolutely key. It starts leading to mindset. It leads to mentors. It leads to connecting. As long as you have that time, that physical, mental, and energetic space, it's going to happen.
Done. Blocking off an hour right now as we speak.
There we go. Love it.
Number 3, what is one tool, process, or hack in the last 3 months that has helped you save time and or effort?
So I'm a really big Excel guy. I use processes to do everything. So I have Asana set up. I have ActiveCampaign. I use processes everywhere. And Calendly is huge for me. But something that really changed my world for all those spreadsheet junkies out there. So I don't know if you're one of them, Yonah.
Definitely not.
You're not? Okay. I was going to say, for those who are out there that are spreadsheet junkies, the query function inside of Excel or inside of Google Sheets has an incredible capability to pull stuff and filter data. And I'm basically using it for my social media calendar, Yonah. So I plan on, in the next week or two, we've already beta tested this back in October, but we plan on releasing one unique piece of content from our podcasts for every platform every day for the next year. And it's going to be scheduled out and done next week. So wow, really excited about doing that. And it's because of that and kind of our spreadsheet tools as well.
Very cool. That is awesome. That is a hack. That is something that people, if anyone wants to get into that, awesome. Number four, sure. If the people you know had to describe you with one word, what would that be?
I've asked that question so many times to all of my guests, and I never realized how hard it would be when it was asked of me. I would say it would be considerate, because all the people that have known me for many years, including my family, friends, investors, right? They know that I'll go above and beyond to help over communicate or just not have any risk of not meeting anyone's expectations. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just not in my nature to underperform. I just can't allow that to happen, because that's just not who I am.
Right.
I always say what I say I'm going to do. So that's kind of what that word would be.
There you go. Awesome. Consider it. Number 5, and the final question of this lightning round, although it wasn't so lightning, but what small thing,
yep.
What small thing do most people not know about you?
Maybe it's that I taught myself German. I'm fluent in German because I lived there for 18 months.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun. I went to school abroad, took my junior year of undergraduate in chemical engineering out in Germany, and failed everything the first semester because I didn't understand what the professors were saying. And then got really good at it in the second semester, just because I spent the whole first semester trying to learn how to do it, and I got really good. And then I've never forgotten. So every time I hear something, I can always pick up the words, and I understand. And unless you practice it, it kind of goes away over time. Right. But yeah, that's one of the things that no one knows very much about.
There you go. Me. That's awesome. Very cool. I did not know. Yeah. There you go. I didn't know that.
There you go. Awesome.
And so we're going to move now to what we call the final 4. And these are 4 questions that we ask on Weiss Advice, all of our guests. And I think one of them you may have already touched upon, but we'll get to it anyways. But the first question is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
I think that, it wasn't terrible, but I would say working at a grocery store. It wasn't terrible, but I was a bagger and a cart pusher. And believe it or not, Yonah, in Colorado, I actually got skin cancer under my eye because of that job, because I was out in the sun so much, and I'm such a pale complexion person. Wow. So needless to say, that job didn't last for very long. But yeah, it wasn't terrible. It was just very laborious, and it wasn't too much fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that racks up there.
Yeah.
So the second question, maybe similar to what you answered before, but the question is, what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Obviously The Gap in the Gain is huge, but I would also say Rocket Fuel and Traction, like those books from Gino Wickman, I think. Those books are incredible because it helped me realize that there's visionary roles and integrator roles. By working with my spouse, by understanding that she's more of a visionary and I'm more of an integrator, we were able to, no pun intended, marry those two together and then just make an incredible business for both of us, because she has her business as well. And we're both working together on our roles. Absolutely.
That's great. And the third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I would love to do surfing. I'd love to learn how to surf. I've heard from so many people that it's a very calming, relaxing type of sport. And so I just don't know much about it, but I've been so curious about that. And so maybe, when we're on the beaches of Portugal, we may take that up and give it a shot.
There you go. Oh, that's awesome. We might just start a Weiss Advice surfing club, because that answer has been actually given a few times.
Really?
By some of our guests. So who knows?
Awesome. That's cool. Good to know.
And fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
So success to me is sustainability. It means being well-rounded and having kind of this outward projecting energy where you're giving more than you're receiving. And I think that it's a long-term thing. So it's not like a destination where you get there and then you're just you're successful and that's the end.
Right.
I think it's a day-to-day walk. And I think that it's basically balance in my mind, and then happiness, right? Like being someone that's contented with what they're doing, giving back, and just feeling confident about what they're doing for other people and for themselves. So that's a really great question, Yonah, because it's a lot of insight into the psyche. So I love that question.
100%. And you knocked it out of the park with that answer, in my opinion. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
I like that. And finally, Derek, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you?
Yeah. So the easiest way is to simply go to elevateequity.org or look us up on Amazon. You can just type my name into the search bar, Derek Clifford, because otherwise it's a very long title. So it takes time. And then we have our podcast as well, called Elevate Your Equity, where my wife and I, we interview people and we try to extract some of the lessons that happen at home and some of the expert advice from people who do world-class things. And so I think any of those will kind of cover you in any direction, no matter what you like to listen to or watch.
Love that. Awesome. And you guys can also find him on all the social media platforms. So check him out, Derek Clifford. It's been a pleasure. Really excited about this, releasing this episode, because so many golden nuggets here. This was awesome. Appreciate you. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Yonah. This has been fun.
And to all our listeners, thank you guys for joining once again until the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.